In the beginning, God created man, and he saw it was very good. And then man created beer, and he saw that it was very good. Let's drink.
I can't get it open.
Let's drink.
I think that makes it better. All right, Paul. Another episode of Tipsy Theology.
Here we are.
How's it going, man?
Dude, it's good. You know, I was just over at Disney resorts yesterday.
That's right. I wanted to hear about this.
It was pretty crazy.
Have you been to like the actual Disney theme parks?
So the last time I was there was that was a long time ago. I think I was 12 or 13 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a while.
Yeah, I haven't been since I remember. I mean, I've lived here for 4 years and.
Yeah. You know, that's one thing that's... Oh, no. Sabotage right here.
That was an accident. I promise.
I'm okay with it. It's a happy little accident.
I guess this is a time to let the audience in on a little bit of what we do over here at the beginning, right?
Yeah,
Because we do take 3 shots,
we do.
and we feel like that is very important. But that's also more than I think we're comfortable with. So, a little sleight of hand, we usually do about half a shot
We do.
of those the 3 half shots.
And, of course, that started like 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, we decided it was for the best.
And it was.
But
it is.
I always accidentally pour Paul a whole one, so.
And if I'll be honest, I accidentally pour you a whole one sometimes. Depends on what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And today we're talking about Genesis.
That's right, yeah. We're talking about Genesis. We're going to hopefully get through chapter 3, talk about the fall.
Hopefully get through verse 1.
Oh, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see where
It's
it goes.
going to be a lot. There's a lot inside there.
But
That's crazy.
all right, let's take this and
Dude,
I
cheers.
want to hear more about this
I
resort.
want to tell you more about it.
Okay. Good stuff.
Maker's Mark. It's just a nice subtle one, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't try to be anything more than what it is.
I like the commercials that Maker's Mark is doing right now. They make it very
I haven't seen any of their ads.
yeah, they're super sweet, and it's like, oh, the daughter's going to the liquor store and picks one up and shows up at her dad's house, and they just have a nice drink together.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's a good brand for Maker's Mark.
I think so.
That's
It's
cool.
kind of like a daily kind of deal. Like,
Oh, that makes sense.
hey, we're hanging out. Let's have a glass.
Nice.
I mean,
Hey, why not?
Not every day.
Why not?
Nah.
Why not? But yeah, anyway, so I was over at Disney Resort, so my friend's family was there, and they're from Ohio, so they came and they're like, hey, come and chill. I was like, sweet. Sounds good. So we were there. It's like, it was at the Contemporary. Dude, the place is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's funny because I know in my brain when I was younger, seeing the ads for Disney resorts and everything, or on YouTube, wherever it is, like, that looks pretty crazy. And then I'm out there in their, you know, outside on their balcony looking at it, and it's like, this is really cool. There's a little Mickey Mouse pool there. But the one thing that I think is amazing is like how well they do everything. We went over to the Grand Floridian for dinner then.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pricey place, but it was good. I got like this lobster burger.
Was it beef and lobster?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Dude, it was delicious. It was good. Then I got a I'll be honest, I pre-gamed a little bit yesterday.
Oh.
I had a Kentucky Mule.
Okay, what's a Kentucky Mule?
So with that one,
Wait, is that
it's
bourbon?
BT.
Oh
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Buffalo Trace with the
It was good.
with the ginger.
Yeah, and they used the
ginger.
good stuff, the Fever Tree stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not bad. It was a good time. But yeah, I was just impressed by the whole experience. I was like, they just do this really, really well.
You heard it
You know,
here, folks.
I looked and I saw, and it was very good.
Yeah, you heard it here, folks. Paul is about to be a Disney adult.
That's the joke I've been trying to set up this whole time, too. To
Yeah.
get to that point.
A little callback action.
Little callback.
We're gonna be comedians, man.
We're going to try.
Yeah.
It's all about storytelling.
Why we drink. Oh,
Ooh.
kind of tastes like Gatorade.
Yeah. It doesn't have any of like the whiskey flavor.
Mm-mm. It's a very well. I mean, we did take makers first, so
That's true.
it's not gonna taste much like alcohol after that.
Wow. Yeah, actually, I got like a little like citrusy note or something. It's
Mhm.
kind of fun. The old honey. Now we got the fire.
Yeah, so I've never had any. I
Fire.
haven't had any cinnamon whiskey.
Yeah. The way I describe it is imagine if Fireball was good.
See, and I haven't had Fireball either.
Oh man. That's okay. So Fireball's like this but worse. Sorry, Fireball. Nice.
So, speaking of Genesis 1 especially, we spent some time there. A lot of
Yeah.
big chaos and order themes going on there.
That's where I'm dressed today.
That's how you're dressed, and that's our shot glasses right now. I gave you chaos. How do you feel
Nice.
about that?
I'm okay with it.
God's about to take you and just...
Tame me. Form me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this conversation so much.
There are a few conversations that I've been excited for since we started this podcast, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
Because I'm really interested to see where this all goes.
See, I have no clue. But at the same time, it's also fun because I remember when we were camping with all our friends.
Yeah.
And we were sitting around the fire, and this conversation came up, and we got into it, and we were like,
Yeah.
we were arguing, we were debating, we were going back and forth, and they were like, "This is what we want.
Like, here we go.
This is what y'all got to do on the podcast." I don't even know if we released anything at that point, but they were like,
I don't
this is
think
what
we
you
did
gotta
at that
do.
point yet.
"Yeah." I think we had tried. I think that's like, I don't know where we were, but we hadn't released anything yet.
So I guess people like it when we get mad at each other.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
You guys are sick.
What's wrong with you? Go look at yourself in the mirror.
Just like, why am I like this? But it's interesting. So I know, I'll admit too, I think even from that point, some of my views have changed slightly. They've been ideas I've been, not completely, but there have been ideas I've been playing around with for a long time that now I feel like I have more of a basis for.
Oh, good.
So yeah, I'll say it's like even from then, some of my ideas have changed a little bit, but not a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
So it's fun. Me too.
Glad you get to flesh those ideas out today.
That's how I do it. I like to talk, and then hopefully it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, from The Office when Michael Scott's like, sometimes I just start a sentence, I don't know where it's going.
Yeah.
When I was a youth pastor, I once posted that and said "me" when I'm preaching. that literally was how I preached.
Do you ever have that? I'm sure, especially when if you're preaching, you start saying something you don't think is. It's like, I think this is kind of meaningful, whatever you're just talking. And you see the response from people, they're like, "Man, that's good." You're like, "Yeah, this is good." Let me say it 4 more times.
Yeah, they teach you that stuff when you go to Bible college, actually.
Do they really?
They're like, "Hey, if you don't know what to say, just repeat what you just said. It'll buy you some time."
I think, actually, I heard a comedian talk about that. Like, when a pastor repeats the same phrase, either means they don't know what to say next or they're buying time.
It's definitely
Or
not because they think
like,
it needs to be
it's
said
important
again.
and they need to say it again, but usually...
It's never that. It's hardly ever that.
Can you imagine if that's just how we talked in normal conversation? Just like, "Hey, what are you doing today?" "What are you doing today?"
What are you doing today? What are you doing today?
You know, I had a great day today. I went out for a drive. I went to work.
All right, I've had enough of this.
Sorry, pastors.
Oh,
You like that little fire?
that's very good.
Isn't that nice?
That tastes like a hot tamale.
Not very vanilla, but
Mm-mm. Low on the vanilla scale, high on the cinnamon scale.
I think a lot of these were pretty low in vanilla today.
Cinnamon.
5 bars.
All right.
Let's pour them.
Pour
So what
this.
do we have today? Dr. Robot.
So I was in Georgia for a wedding last weekend, and I picked
Yeah.
up this local brew from Atlanta. Monday Night Brewing, Dr. Robot. It's a blackberry lemon sour.
Ooh,
It's got a nice color to it.
dude. George is killing it.
I did buy it based on the label. Yes.
Yeah, they're killing on the labels. These labels are sweet.
Also, look, it's got a tie on it, and we love ties.
That's true.
Yeah.
Can we buy these ties somewhere?
It would be kind of cool, wouldn't it?
It's got a robot on it. I guess it makes sense. It's Dr. Robot.
Yeah, and he's got doctor clothes on.
That's pretty sweet.
Blowing my mind right now.
I can get into that.
All right.
Monday night.
Cheers me up, man.
Dude, cheers.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning. And I know you had some. You were saying stuff earlier about. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Let's start with in the beginning.
So yeah, I'll preface it with this, and this is one of those funny things. I know I've said this before, and I'm not even going to pull up the Bible so we can read it, so people don't think we're that dishonest. But that's kind of where a lot of this came from for me. Is like, we're very dishonest. I think I mentioned this on another podcast where it's like we tend to read things, which is normal. We tend to read things with our own agendas, our own worldviews, experiences backing up our thoughts and how we approach and interpret things. And I'm like, that's kind of dishonest to do, I think, in a lot of ways. There are points to that, and I think there's places where that is helpful. But when it comes to like reading, especially an ancient text with such a foreign culture and people, it's like we really don't know what it's talking about in a lot of ways. And so that's where part of my journey began with like, I want to actually read the Bible.
That's great news. Fantastic.
Yeah. So it's really easy to be like, oh yeah, I read the Bible today. But it's like, but did you read it?
Yeah.
Because there's so many things that we skip over.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, whether it's just because like, I don't know what that means, keep going. Or it's just like,
we just assume we
don't care.
Just assume the surface level is that. That's it.
Right. And I think with that we miss a lot of the richness of what the writers are writing. But of course that also be interpreted through the lens of what was happening around them. What's the context of this writing?
Mm-hmm.
Who are they talking to? Which is a big question. A big conversation piece. So looking at here, so Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. We can stop right there.
Yeah, let's
There's
pause.
a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot in there.
All right. What do you think the things we need to point out there are?
Yeah, so this is what I was mentioning earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at the first three words.
In the beginning.
In the beginning. Seems pretty cut and dry. Everyone knows this verse. It's like John 3:16. It's like you don't even have to go to church. You know what these verses are.
Yeah.
But I think this is part of where it goes into that little bit of maybe intellectual dishonesty, which I hate saying it that way, but it's like we need to look at it's like, okay, what is the original language was not English. Mm-hmm. The Hebrew writers didn't write this in English. So there's a whole other language. There's translations that are happening here.
Wait, you're telling me that the Jewish people didn't have the King James version?
It's weird, right?
That wasn't the first version?
Yeah, so apparently they used the Hebrew Bible at that time. Well, they used scrolls, but it's kind of weird.
All right, well.
I guess we want to be hardcore. We should all read ancient Hebrew.
I'm having a crisis of faith right now.
This isn't good. Mayday. But so
what you're saying is in the beginning is a poor translation?
I'm going to argue that.
Okay.
And this is why. So Hebrew is not written with any vowels. I think most people could probably tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that was created in like the 8th century AD. It's like this is like medieval or whatever.
Which is why we don't even know what God's Hebrew name is, because I mean we think it's Yahweh. We assume it's Yahweh, but we don't actually know if A is the right vowel there.
Right. And it's interesting. So that's one of the things that it's kind of that's the consensus is that it's Yahweh. And part of that was actually have something written about that, which is kind of cool. I just have to find it in here. But it's when God's talking and he says, because up to that point they used a lot of El names to describe him.
Yeah.
Which is reminiscent of the culture in like Enlil and El.
Elohim, like
exactly.
in Genesis, the two creation, the creation story in Genesis
Up
2.
until he calls himself the I Am, he was always referred to as an El something, El Shaddai, whatever it is. I don't even know if that's the right word, but I think
El Shaddai is one, yeah.
Okay. Whew. Thank you. But yeah, so it's like up to that point, that's what they referred to him as, because that's what the culture around them referred to gods as. So when God calls himself I am, which in Hebrew in the first person is Ahyeh, but when you refer to that in the third person or in any other that's not the first, it's Yahweh.
Yahweh, yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of cool, and it means he who causes to be.
Wow.
Which is great, reminiscent of the creation account.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to that, again, bringing back the old Hebrew and my poor pronunciations. So yeah, vowels were created later, invented later for this language. So there's two ways you can look at it. There is Barashit, which is the beginning, the definite article. And I know it's like in Hebrew, it's like this little tiny like T-looking thing that goes underneath one of the letters there. Or there is Bereshit, which means when God began. When God began to create would be the full phrase there, which kind of changes things a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
So we have in the Bible, in the ESV translation of the Bible here, which is what I have pulled up, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. But when you look at it with the other Bereshit, it is when God began to create the heavens and the earth, which is a whole totally different mentality and approach to this now. And so it's interesting. I'm like, well, where'd you get that from? Well, there's Hebrew scholars that do whatever they do. They've got PhDs. But this is actually, when God began, is actually a more accurate translation from the Masoretic text. In fact, there's not a single manuscript or any, if you look in the Hebrew Bible itself, it uses the vowel for be. So it's like, it's when God began would be the more appropriate and accurate translation.
Okay, how do you think that changes things?
Well,
so here's how
it's a lot.
I think I prefer the. It's my preference, but I also think it is right that when God began it's the preferable translation. Yeah. But at the same time, what does that change? Because I don't think I don't, at least when I read in the beginning God created, I'm not thinking in God's beginning. I'm thinking in creation's beginning. Yeah. That was the beginning of time as we know it, right?
Yeah, at the beginning of everything, in a sense.
Time, space, and matter all began when God started to take this formless void and create out of it.
And so, well, that's the difference right there too. And there's two approaches to even in the beginning idea, where it's this idea of matter, and it's like, in the beginning God created heavens and earth. Cool, God created matter, God created light, He created energy, whatever it is. But then when you have when He began to create, it's like, well, was the matter already there? Was it already there, and He started then working with it? It's like that's the difference. So that. So it does. It kind of changes our focus a little.
Yeah, because it does seem. I mean, even if we go back to Tohu Vabohu, everything was formless and void. Yeah. Chaos was formless and void, but chaos was still there. God didn't create out of nothing; He created out of chaos, right? So where did that chaos come from? Yeah. And so Genesis doesn't have recollection of before that at that time period, you know?
Right. And so it's interesting because when you read it as when God began, it talks about God tamed. It seems to say, as we continue forward as well, God tamed chaos. God tamed the void, or the deep, as we'll get into. In our scientific mentality toward it, and our modern thinking, we're like, okay, well, now where did the matter come from? Yeah. And
where did the chaos come from?
Honestly, and this is what a lot of scholars have said, is like, you're asking the wrong questions because they didn't care. Yeah. The writers.
I was about to say, I don't care.
Right. Me as it's like, well, we got to count for everything. It's like, well, I need to know. I care a lot. But the writers, you're asking the wrong questions because they don't care. That's not the point. And I think that's I know I said this earlier. This is it's a reminiscent argument I was making in our other podcast about inerrancy is just that, what is the point Scripture is trying to make? Yeah. That's what, if you're looking at and this is a two-sided coin here, in the sense of if you're trying to make a scientific argument based on the text here, you miss the point of what the writers are trying to make. But that doesn't mean there's no reality behind what they're writing. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I like what you're getting into here. I think it would be helpful to put Genesis in context, especially this. One, we know that multiple writers are involved in Genesis, right? Even Genesis 1 was written by somebody different than Genesis 2. Even the language.
Two different times.
Two different time periods. These are two different creation accounts.
Yeah.
And so it's helpful to put in context why this account was put together, and a lot of it was in response to, of course, in Pete Enns' book Genesis for Normal People, he's going to make the claim that Genesis was put together during like the Babylonian exile. This is after the time of David, when they were like, we got to put this collection together, and so we have to recognize Babylon's presence in all of this, and it's almost like the creation account is a response to Babylon's creation myth. The Enuma Elish, right? Is that what it is? I think so. Anyways, and so with Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created, is making a very obvious statement that there's one God. Yeah, and also that it's not. This wasn't just a byproduct of the war and chaos of Tiamat and the other. What was his name?
There's so many.
Marduk and Tiamat.
Marduk and
Marduk. He takes
Tiamat, whatever you want to say.
And rips her to shreds, and that's how we get the heavens and the earth.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's right here. I'll show it to everybody. So this is the book that Trey's referring to. I started reading this. I'm on chapter 7 right now. Is where I stopped. Just because I ran out of time, and I got to give it back now. So there's a lot I have to say about that book in particular. But what I will say is that I think there's a lot of things that he brings to light in an understandable way, which is really cool. There's a lot of true things inside of there. There's things that I would say it's like, I don't know about that. Yeah. But that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I think he does well to bring up that point. And the only thing I would say is, I don't think he goes far enough. In the sense of in Genesis and even the writings of Scripture, it's a response. It's a response to the culture, and that's a theme that we see throughout all of Scripture. When you look at the way that God describes Himself, the way people describe God, it's very reminiscent of the gods those people worship, because they're saying, and this is what Genesis is saying, is that cool, you have all these gods. This guy did that guy did that, but here's Yahweh, and He's better than all those, and He actually did that. Yeah. And so when you look at it, it's like, I know he brings up, there's two accounts of creation, and they're a little bit different. And the reason for that, or one of the reasons that people would say is like, well, it's responding to every creation account and saying, everybody, you're wrong, it's Yahweh. And you look through that, it's like, the one of them is God speaking in everything into existence. It's kind of a rarity inside of antiquity to see a creation account like that, except for the Egyptian. I think it was Ptah. I think it was their god who created everything, and he was the one who spoke everything. And we see Genesis, the writers of Genesis 1 respond to that by saying, nope, it wasn't him either. It was all Yahweh. And I think that's an important thing to recognize. It's like what they're the claim that they're making is that Yahweh is better than these other gods. Yeah.
And it helps be put in context that, I don't know if we might have talked about this, but the Jewish people, before the prophets came around, the Jewish people were monolatrous. Like, they believed in these other gods, but they only believed in worshiping Yahweh. Yes. Like, they thought these other gods did exist, but Yahweh was the only one that deserved worship. Like, Yahweh was supreme over these other gods. Yes. And, I mean, that's kind of what is going on in this creation narrative as well, is like, hey, this God's better. Yeah. And one of the ways He's better is with these other gods and their creation myths is humans are kind of a byproduct of them fighting with each other, which is why polytheism doesn't work, is because if there's more than one God, who's going to be the biggest, who's going to be the greatest one, right? They're going to fight for who's the top dog. Yeah. And typically in a lot of I'll use the word pagan because that's the word we typically use. A lot of those writings, other ancient writings,
we see that's all it is. It's just people are just kind of here, and they're just kind of fighting, and we get involved sometimes.
Yeah, we get involved sometimes. And oftentimes the way we are involved is kind of like we're basically servants to the gods, right?
Yeah.
We have
well, it's because we're doing the grunt work they don't want to do. They're too lazy.
Exactly. We're doing whatever they don't want to do.
And if we get too noisy, they're going to kill us.
and the Hebrew myth starts with, no, we're going to raise the bar of humans' intrinsic value. They are made in God's own image.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to be my representatives. God says they're going to be my representatives on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not another. I'm not aware of another creation myth that elevates humans' value to where they have this intrinsic value.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a different approach, and I think that's one of the things that makes the Genesis account of creation so unique to all these other stories. And one, it's responding to all of them and saying, "Nah, it's not him. It's this guy." And its approach to God's relationship to man is different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a much more palatable God, honestly.
Yeah.
It's a God that actually wants to be involved with us, right?
Which honestly is kind of weird.
It is weird.
But yeah, so I don't know, what are your thoughts on, do you have any thoughts on that? Before we move to verse 3?
How far did we get there?
That was verse 1 and 2.
I feel like that's Genesis 1 right there, right?
Oh, there's still so much more.
Yeah, but we got into we jumped to the humans. That's the bottom of Genesis 1, right?
Kind of. But yeah, there's a lot. Part I have a lot written. So I'm like, ooh, cool.
It doesn't look like we're going to get past Genesis 1 though, does it?
Maybe not. And so part of it again, it goes back to Hebrew. And because I can hear people saying, because what we're basically saying right now is that the Genesis is not claiming that God created something out of nothing. That's kind of the claim that is the subtext of what we're saying.
Well, with these other myths, basically they're saying they created more chaos out of chaos. And Yahweh creates order out of the chaos. He doesn't create more chaos. Right. He orders the chaos.
Yeah.
He has dominion over the chaos in order to order it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but I wanted to bring up this point because I know this might be something for people, which is what about bara? Mm-hmm. From nothing.
Yeah.
So it would seem like it's pretty cut and dry, right? Okay, the whole idea of when God began to create the heavens and the earth is wrong because bara, something out of nothing. But it's not that easy, unfortunately. I wish it was. But so there's a few verses I have written here. So yeah, bara does not inherently speak of creating from nothing. So there's a different view to that. And part of it we can look into Genesis 1:26-27, Genesis 2:7-22, and Exodus 20:11. But I wrote one of them down. And so if we go with the idea that bara means something out of nothing, done. Then we have a contradiction in the Bible, which you love.
I do love contradictions. Yeah.
You rejoice in that.
We ourselves are contradictions, so we should welcome them.
And so the contradiction is Genesis 1:26-27, which, let me pull it up here. 1:26-27. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, or birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Which word do you think is used there for created?
Wait a minute. I don't know. You tell me. Bara. Okay.
The old bara. So, okay. God created man out of nothing. Is that true?
That's not what Genesis says.
Yeah, because later it talks about how God formed them out of the dust of the earth.
Out of the dust and his breath, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, so that word doesn't only mean that. So that's the complication that happens in here. And this is why it's like if we try to approach it with that sense, like understand it's like we're trying to read too much into it sometimes. It doesn't mean that there's nothing there, that they're not, that this isn't a somewhat, I'm avoiding using the word accurate, but it's like, it's not saying that everything they talked about, none of it happened. Like, this isn't really, God didn't actually do this in this way, but it doesn't mean that he did do it in this way. Does that make sense?
Sure.
It's the idea of, we weren't there. None of these writers were there. No one was there. So we don't know what actually happened.
Well, I mean,
it's like, it doesn't mean anything.
It's funny that we made it this far without me even like saying, hey, I don't even accept this as like history. Like, this is,
right.
This is...
I guess that's been the subtext to this a little bit. But I mean, that's the kind of thing I was going to bring up a little bit. It's like, it's taken us a long time to get to this point. Even we might even get to Genesis 2.
It doesn't look like it, no.
Sorry. I'll stop talking in a minute here.
Even though I'm like, everything you're saying, I'm like, oh, this is all building up for Genesis 3, baby. Let's go.
There's so much in there. Okay, we'll jump into it. Let's jump into it. The only thing
we'll get to it when we get to it.
The only thing I was going to finish inside of there was saying that we can't make a judgment claim either way. That's intellectually dishonest for us to assume it's all fake because this, or that it's all real because this. Because that's not the point of what the writers are making.
Okay.
And so I think it's dishonest for us to say one way or the other. And the other one, this is one that everyone loves, which is Yam.
Yummy.
Yeah. Which, for most people, especially anyone interested, I learned this as well from Answers in Genesis. That's the one they go to all the time. And I love a lot of the stuff they do.
I don't.
But so the idea there is, oh, cool. It means, especially when it's accompanied by a numeral, it means 24-hour period. Boom. Done. I wish. And so part of that is Genesis 2:4, Genesis 33 through 13, and then also I think I brought another one in here as well. So the word yum, or yum, I don't know how to pronounce it, followed by a numeral, doesn't always mean that. It means, a lot of times it's used as just meaning day, the way we mean it, daytime. Mm-hmm. When I say I worked all day, I don't mean I worked for an entire 24-hour cycle. I mean I worked 8 hours. I worked during the daytime when the sun was up.
Well, even let's go back to the opening verses where it's like God creates light on the first day. He creates the sky on the second. He creates the earth and the waters on the third. And then he creates the sun on the fourth day.
Mm-hmm.
We measure days based on the sun. If there's no sun, what are these days? So I think it's
a lot in there for sure. And it's like, I know there's arguments on both sides for that, but I'm not interested in getting into that.
Yeah, I'm not.
The only thing I'm interested in is like, let's be honest about this word. So the one that I'm going to bring in particular, I think this is the one that really hammers it home, which is Genesis 31:23, the incident with Jacob and Laban. So it says, he took his kinsman with him, he being Laban, and pursued him, being Jacob, for 7 days, and followed close after him until the hill country of Gilead. So the word there is yam, followed by a numeral. Mm-hmm. So do we really want to argue that he chased Jacob for 7 consecutive 24-hour cycles? It's like, that's a little ridiculous.
He might have.
Maybe, but it seems more reasonable, especially when you look through other parts of Scripture. It's like, it seems more reasonable they're using it to mean he chased him when the sun was up, and then he went to bed. And then he did it again the next day. So all that to say, it's not as cut and dry as we want it to be sometimes. It's complicated.
I can get on board with that, yeah. It's complicated.
It's complicated. In the words of Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, do the Jordan Peterson impression.
I'm not good at it.
You want to.
I do.
But you know you want to.
I do. It's complicated. It's very complicated. I'm sorry.
Well, bringing him up.
Yeah.
We sound like such fanboys now at this point.
I know. I don't mean to bring him up because I don't actually. I enjoy some of his content, but I don't watch him that often.
Yeah.
Every time I say it's complicated, that's all I can think of, though.
No, but I mean, he did these Genesis lectures.
Yeah.
Not as a religious person. Like, he prefaced all of them by saying, hey, I don't know what the religious significance of this is. I'm just going to go through the psychological significance. And that's, like, one of the most popular things he's done.
Oh, wow.
So people are very interested, religious or not, it's probably religious, but
Yeah.
Christian or not, or Jewish or not, or nominally religious or not, like whether you identify as religious or not, what Genesis has to offer speaks to everybody for some reason. And I think it is. It's just like it's like a good fiction book speaks to you, but it's more than that too.
Yeah.
Right? It's like all the other myths, how they have significance and they speak to you, and it's more. So this was a really interesting conversation.
It's
I
true.
feel
we still have some time.
We dove right into it.
It's true. And the best part is I still have more to say about Genesis 1 through 3.
I could talk about Genesis 1 still. I'm not done with Genesis 1.
I'm not done. And part of it is I want to save some of these comments for another episode. This one's for James. You know who you are. About a dragon.
Out to James.
About dragons.
Okay, Genesis 3, man, I am very much looking forward to Genesis 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a lot of research on that.
Even
one.
Genesis 1-3, we've got a reference right there in the first 3 verses. We have technically a dragon reference, which is interesting. And everyone's going to be like, huh? And we'll talk about it.
Dragons?
Dragons! But what do you have? I talked a lot this time.
Yeah, and I appreciated everything you said, and I enjoy that you obviously did your research on these Hebrew words and what they mean. I think that adds a lot. I think even though we kind of, before we even like gave this zoomed out vision of what Genesis is all about,
yeah,
I feel like what we had to offer for Genesis 1 was very insightful, honestly. And I hope our listeners agree, and I hope it causes reason to dig deeper into these ideas and concepts.
I'll press, but I love Genesis, so that's part of why.
It's one of my favorite books.
It's a great book, yeah.
And, of course, I don't take the position of it being history. I like what I think Pete Enns calls it historized fiction or historized myth. He uses one of those. I can't remember which one.
Okay.
I like that a lot, especially for like once we get into Abraham and the patriarchs. I think there's definitely some history there. But at the same time, if this is being collected and written down during the Babylonian exile, their goal is not to write the history perfectly. Their goal is to write the history for where they are today. Like hey, this is who we were, so this is what it speaks to us today. We are in exile, and it is hard. But remember our forefathers. Remember, it's kind of how we moralize our forefathers, even though they did egregious things in America today, right? Because it's more motivating to look toward the positive light of things, right?
Well, that's the one thing
more
I know
motivating, right?
He wrote that I thought was well said, is in the point of like, here they are in exile in Babylon, and they're like, yeah, our God's still stronger, even though they're in the weakest position.
And I think, oh man, that's one of the best things you can get out of Genesis is, hey, even Genesis and Job and Ecclesiastes, and all of these biblical books that really are written in this time of immense suffering and chaos and the unknown. Holding on to the hope. When everything around you doesn't look hopeful, and still holding on to the hope that, hey, my God is above all of this. And then once we move into Jesus and we realize who God really is, it's like that is really good news.
Yeah. And I think that's the one thing that, honestly, the entire Bible, but especially Genesis and Exodus, Exodus probably definitely really hammers it home, but it's the idea of this is a story about man's failure and God's faithfulness. And it's like that's the story about how big, how good, how righteous Yahweh is and his faithfulness to his promise.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Exodus is a wonderful book to bring up as well, and we should do a podcast on Exodus
That'd be great.
as well. But
because this one has definitely covered all of Genesis.
But I mean, there's a reason why slaves in America and Black Americans still today cling to the book of Exodus, because that's one of the most hopeful books for their situation. He's like, hey, you're in exile. You're being oppressed. You are not given equality. And still there's a message of, well, my God is above this, and my God will bring us through this. Even though nothing about my circumstances gives cause for hope, I still have trust in the Lord that he'll bring us through.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I'm dressed the way I'm dressed today. Chaos and order. Yahweh brings order to chaos. He tames the chaos.
Well, you don't want to get too much into order, because order can be bad too.
But yeah, so can I admit something to you?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love for you.
So part of it is like, there's so much inside Genesis 1. That's part of why I wanted to talk a lot about that. There's still a lot more that we haven't discussed. But also, there's even more, probably. And I think based on, with the Genesis for Normal People book that we've been reading, I think that's where the majority of my disagreement with them comes up, inside of their interpretation of that. And it's like, I know we need a ton of time to talk about that.
Sure.
There's one fundamental thing with that. And yeah, I know it's like, I know I'd want more time. I'm sure you would want more time to talk about that. So I'm excited for us to do this again and talk.
So you want to give us a little preface of what it is? Is that what's going on here?
Sure. So I think, one of the main things is his idea of, and I'm assuming this is your idea. So if it's not, you can just say, you're wrong. I don't believe that. And I'll be like, cool, sounds good. But I still disagree with him. His idea of, he talks about the serpent with Adam and Eve.
That's Genesis 3, man.
That's what I mean.
Do you want to get into it? Just go ahead. Yeah.
That's my preface where it's like, that's where my biggest disagreement with this writer is.
All right, only because I assume our next episode will focus mostly on Genesis 3.
Most likely.
Because Genesis 2 is so much like Genesis 1.
They're very similar.
There's some things I want to point out that are different. But
True.
Yeah. Tell me your disagreement, because...
Yeah, so the primary disagreement I have with that is his view that... So the serpent, basically, he the way he talks about it is he rushes the process of Adam and Eve about man eating from the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and so of the tree. And so that is like, that's my massive disagreement, and I've got a lot of things about why that is a disagreement. But I feel like that's where we would probably disagree on some things.
Yeah,
if you
even because I love. I'm very excited to talk about this, and I kind of want to wait. But I will say, even before I was introduced to Peter Enns, I was convinced that well, first of all, I don't believe it was an actual event, right? I don't believe that Adam and Eve actually ate from a tree, and
I want to talk about that too.
Yeah, of course. And it's not actually, if we're being more accurate, it's not the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's the tree of merism. Merism is basically the polarity of good and evil. It's like good and evil and everything in between. It's basically consciousness itself. It's basically knowing itself. And I do believe that God intended for us to know these things.
Okay.
But not the way that we chose the expedient route rather than the patient. God wanted to. Oh man, this is too much.
And that's what I mean.
I'm giving too much into the next conversation because. But I will say,
I'm already like holding myself back of like, oh, I want to say something right now, but I shouldn't because of time.
Yeah,
time.
But I'll just say it's like Adam and Eve are children, and they have to grow in their maturity, and speed that process up, and there's going to be detrimental effects. But do it the faithful and patient process, coming into that knowledge, then you can actually bear the responsibility of knowing these things, which God and I don't want to make any disagreeable statements where you're going to fight back.
I mean, you already have, so it's great.
Anyways.
But yeah, so, yeah.
That's
all
just,
I'm going to say...
I'll let you say something, then
you're good.
Close up.
All I'm going to say is, I want to have this conversation so bad. You don't understand. I'm sure you
better do your research. That's all I'm going to say. You better do your research.
Same.
You better be ready for it.
I have the same thing, because I already have probably 4 pages of stuff written down about this idea of stuff that I've written over the last 2 hours. No, all last night I was writing a ton of stuff, just my thoughts. And I want to have them well more well formulated for that conversation. But I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, that's going to be a good conversation.
And if you guys want to hear that, please let us know, because you don't understand how much I'm clenching fists right now to, like, not because I want to punch anybody.
He just wants to unleash on me right now, man.
I'm like, let's talk about this right now.
Anyways, do you have any closing thoughts? I've got one more thing I want to say before we go.
Yeah. I think my closing thought is something I said earlier, and I'm probably gonna harp on this forever. But it's the idea of,
it's so complex.
It's very complicated. That one was a little bit better. It's two ideas. One of them, and they go hand in hand. It's like I want to, and I think we should all, let's pursue truth above our own agenda. And that's hard for me to do a lot of times. And so I think that's the important thing. Let's seek truth. Let's be truth seekers, and let's actually read. Let's actually listen. Let's actually communicate. Which is a lot of blanket statements to say, but it's like it's what we talked about on. I don't know. It probably won't come out by the time we talk about this.
We got so many Whiskey Wednesdays lined up.
It's true. It's the Proverbs thing. Seek to understand before you seek to reply. And it's like, don't just listen to someone to talk, listen to someone to understand and communicate. And that goes for the same as reading scripture. Read to understand what is being said here. What is the point of what's happening, and not what do I want it to be.
Yeah. I'm not going to reply to that because we've gone over time.
There's a lot in there.
But all I want to leave you with, our dear listeners.
Oh, dear, precious listeners. I didn't like that at all.
When we approach the book of Genesis.
Yeah.
When we approach the book of Genesis, I just want everybody to know you can be faithful to the text and not believe it to be literal. So thanks for joining us. I'm not saying, hey, whoa. I'm not saying you can't believe it's literal. Just saying you can be faithful to it, even if you don't think it's literal. Just thanks for joining us on another episode of Tipsy Theology.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much. And thank you to Maximize Digital Media and Annie Yulee for producing this episode. Trey?
Is there anything else we want to say? Is there anything?
Can I say something?
Fine, yeah, whatever.
So,
better be nice.
We're going to have a little bit of change happening soon.
We're always changing things,
and I don't like it.
We are dynamic. Oh, no, don't bring this up.
I have to bring it up.
Don't bring this up.
They need to know. So, Trey is moving to Georgia for school. And it's a good thing. He's going to be learning more about Jesus.
I'm going to be so much smarter than you.
I know. I got to read. Please give me resources. I need to up my reading because Trey's going to surpass me, and I'll be like, yeah. Yeah, I know stuff. But yeah, so things are going to be a little bit different probably moving forward, but we're still going to be doing this because we love doing this. I love talking to this guy right here, and I love hearing your guys' thoughts and opinions and all this crazy stuff. But it might be a little rocky moving forward just as we get things situated.
Yeah, maybe. But probably it's us. It probably won't be.
We're just going to do it.
But yeah, I just jumping on what Paul's saying here. Hey, we love interacting with you guys. So find us on social medias. I think my username on Twitter, Instagram, Hinkle3_Trey. Paul's is...
Find me on Instagram, Twitter, whatever you want. Paul Yulee 94.
All right. Perfect. All right,
I'm old.
We'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah, we will. Cheers.